The Buttkicker Gamer 2. What you see and what you hear is what you feel. Buttkicker. The future is feeling.
Atlanta Motor Speedway has always been known for being one of the fastest tracks in NASCAR. However, there's an added challenge as of 2022. No longer is it that bad fast 1.54 mile speedway that lends you to either having to run on the white line or the outside wall. No longer is it that bumpy behemoth of the Southeast that rips out and just tears your tires to pieces. No longer is it the Atlanta we used to know. Now, Atlanta Motor Speedway is something of a new kind. It is a tight 1.54 mile super speedway, emulating that of Daytona and Talladega. It is a new era in Hampton, Georgia. Welcome to the virtual pit stop, the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway on Pit Stop TV. My name is Andrew Cardinale IV, and I am so glad to be taking you all through this evening's race. It is, of course, the Shake and Make Racing Buttkicker Cup Series as we head into round 19 of 36 this season in 2023. It's been a long time, nearly 2 months since we've been live with the Buttkicker Cup Series, but we're glad to be here this evening at Atlanta for one heck of a race. We'll take a look at the track map, of course, first. The 2022 version of the Oval does now have more laps on it. You can see the Open Wheel Series has even been here with a lap time of 23.004 miles per hour, not miles per hour, seconds rather. But of course, we're looking at the 31.125 that the Cup Series had last put down here at Hampton, Georgia. Now, these times have changed. That used to be the fastest lap time. I believe that was prior to this past week on the sim. Now these guys are drafting a whole lot more quickly, and we are down into the 29.6s thanks to Brian Watson in qualifying. Let's take, not qualifying, in practice. Let's take a look at our point standings coming into this evening. Joshua Watson on top of the board, as he has been since Daytona. Of course, got that win at Daytona to lock himself straight on in to this season's playoffs. Has not looked back since. Wilhite, Duran, Wilson, there we go, Watts, Mashievsky, Ward, Levine, and Kleinschmidt have all locked themselves into the playoffs as well, leaving Brandon Sheffield, Rocky Hart Pence, Lawrence Shaughnessy, I believe that's John Jackson. I'm going to have to, that one might be wrong, but Jason Jackson, I'm sorry, car 86, along with Brian Traeger, Ed Kane, and Nick Barisi currently on the in to the playoffs. Then those red names at the bottom, Whitford, Watson, Clark, and Elliott, they have got to get themselves a win, but they can do it on points. And I want to make this clear distinction. Yellow names are what we are currently considering, quote, safe. That does not mean they're locked in by any means. I would say Sheffield and Hart Pence are close, but Ed Kane, Brian Traeger, Jason Jackson, they can absolutely fall out of these playoffs if they are not careful in these next 10 races, or I think it's 8 races left to go to the playoffs. In fact, we can take a look thanks to our season schedule. Let's take a look here. 36 races in total, of course, going on down to Phoenix, and we are here this evening. Now, I must point out, we are back in 2 races as opposed to 3. We're actually broadcasting Pocono instead of Richmond. I'm sorry, 4 races as opposed to 3. We're broadcasting Michigan as opposed to Richmond. So a slight schedule change there, but we'll be back from Michigan after this evening at Atlanta. We'll talk more about that later on as you take a look here at the schedule. Qualifying is getting on track. Nick Barisi currently the fastest of the bunch. As you can take a look here on the ticker, Barisi even faster that lap, putting down a big time at 31.096. These guys in single car runs are still in the 31s, which is a little bit slower, of course, than we're used to seeing at a place like Atlanta Motor Speedway. As you can see, Mashievsky, Sheffield, and others coming across the line. There's a look at Derek Whitford. How about Luke Doran in the number 5 car across the line to complete lap number 2? And it does not move him up the board at all. Oh, it does actually to pole. It was a delayed response there from timing and scoring, as now Wilhite jumps up on his 2nd lap of record. Big time laps out of the 5 and 7 cars. Here's Brian Watson at a turn number 2. We'll see what the number 04 can do. Whitford goes 4th. Derbyshire, Austin Derbyshire goes to 8th position. Shively to 3rd, Babcock to 6th, Traeger to 8th. How about Watson here out of turn number 4? Levine as well on his final lap. Watson to the start-finish line from 13th. Does he go any higher? He will. It is to 10th as Justin Levine goes all the way up to 2nd position. He's now got a race win under his belt. Here's a look at Adrian Watts. Joshua Watson does have a lap in, just began the lap number 2. That first lap slow at a 31.598. That is to be expected. Here's the onboard driver's eye view for Joshua Watson, headed into turn number 3, way up high, arcs it down low. And right along that bottom red and white line, now down underneath it across the front stretch, and it is a 31.053. That's not good for pole, that's good for 5th position. Lawrence Shaughnessy will go to 11th spot in car number 9. Adrian Watts, Andrew Griesbaum also on track. Watts across the line, that will complete lap number 1. The 31.620. Here's a look at Griesbaum just getting onto the track for the first time this evening. It looks like Ed Kane, Aiden Doyle, and Alan Wilson will not make it, at least yet, to the racetrack. Looking on board with Adrian Watts as he completes lap number 2. His qualifying run finalized. It's second quick. Wow. This is a track that kind of surprises you in qualifying. You don't really know a lap is going to be quick until you come across the start-finish line and timing and scoring lights up. But Adrian Watts to second place in qualifying this evening to Chris Wilhite. Here's a look at Andrew Griesbaum, top of the racetrack here for lap number 1, trying to get that run for lap 2. Off the top side of the banking all the way down. Doesn't cut the apron just yet. Trying to keep the motor spooled up. Let's see what Griesbaum here has here on lap number 2. It's tough to hold a pretty wheel in a place like Atlanta, a place like Daytona, Talladega, and be perfect every inch of this lap. But you have to be perfect. And in a world where sim racers run dozens of races per week, you've got to be absolutely perfect in your qualifying if you want to start up front. Griesbaum to the start-finish line and across the line. It's a 31.071. That's not good for pole, but it is good for 8th position. And Griesbaum, so far, is the final car on the racetrack in any shape or form. Everybody else has either qualified or has not yet hit the track, including Las Vegas winner Alan Wilson III. Aiden Doyle, also in the pit lane. Edward Kane, also in the pit lane. Neither of them having entered the racetrack at all until, here we go, Alan Wilson decides he's up for the challenge, heads out onto the racetrack in the racetoolsrec.com. Number 79 Chevrolet Camaro. And this gives it a bit of an old school qualifying feeling. One car on the racetrack right now will ride on board here with Wilson up through the gears. Third, he's going to pull 4th. Oh, that's loose. And that is actually huge. He might have waited on some extra cloud cover here at the speedway, but that is going to hugely undermine his qualifying run. It's full throttle here. Any blip between exiting the pit lane and getting onto the racetrack is going to cost you time. And Alan Wilson, I think, is going to have to understand the realities of that. Alan Wilson, lap number 1 to the start-finish line. Let's see where car 79 can go. The racetoolsdirect.com Chevrolet Camaro. 19th quick, that's to be expected. That is normal for lap 1 here in this kind of qualifying. He's gunning for lap number 2 down along the inside of the racetrack. He does pop up out of turn 2, and there's a reason for that. If you open the wheel up a little bit out of the corner and arc it in, you turn the wheel less than if you were to try and hold it all the way down to the bottom side of the racetrack. So he's actually saving tire, reducing friction, more importantly, in this qualifying run. Across the line, let's see where he goes. It's a 31.036, third quick from the Ryko Performance driver. That is a big time lap time for car 79. Third quick. 3/1000ths of a second faster than Justin Levine. 5/1000ths of a second faster than Luke Doran. So a big qualifying effort there out of driver 79. Of course, he won at Las Vegas. This actually may be a very similar race in terms of how it ends up playing out. Now, in case you're curious, we do not have the NASCAR pit lane rules in place this evening. We can take a look here at the track map, and I can kind of talk about what I'm getting at here. This section of racetrack in NASCAR now has been added to the pit lane, effectively meaning that you have to get down to pit road speed before entering that part of racetrack, and you, of course, have to treat it like an access road. You have to go down onto the apron and follow it into the pit lane. That is not the case here on iRacing. It does, the sim does require you to take this bit of racetrack, of pit lane back onto the racetrack. Of course, the pit exit, there's a cone here that marks where you can get back on, but you do not need to take it into turns 3 and 4. NASCAR has, of course, lenienced that, if you will, a bit more lenient this time around. In the summer of 2023, now you can run 90 miles per hour down there instead of 45 like in pit lane, but it is still not something we have to worry about with iRacing, so that is a good thing this evening. We don't have to worry about these guys getting down to that speed if we pit under green, and I have a feeling this evening that we will be seeing some green flag pit stops. Brandon Sheffield actually just hit me up on Discord, and I appreciate this kind of insight from a driver in the league, and of course knows how this race is going to play out a little bit better than a broadcaster would before the drop of the green flag. And Brandon reaches out and basically just told me, hey, this is going to be 100% a team race, and actually sent me a lineup of all the teams. I had a decent idea to begin with for most of these guys, but sent me a team lineup. This is going to be a big-time team race, and the other big thing that he highlighted is these drivers are racing with 75% fuel, and actually that is inaccurate there on the race details, so we'll change that quickly to reflect the 75% fuel load. There we go. 75% fuel, and this is something that the league does in order to promote more pit stops. At a lot of races this season, it has hovered around 50%, 40% fuel load to what these drivers, what these cars would normally take at 18.9 gallons. I believe maybe it's 20 gallons now with the next gen fuel cell, but it's somewhere in that area. And of course, I just realized we're in B-roll as I bring up that graphic. Here we go. The race details brought to you by Whiplash Simcams on the bottom right of your screen. A 120 lap race, a 60 lap stage 1, 3 change sets of tires, 75% fuel load, and that is huge for these guys. They can go much further into this race. I'm still not exactly sure how long. I'm going to guess 45 to 50 laps. I'm going to safely guess maybe more like 40 laps. It probably will be more like 40 laps, 35 to 40, somewhere in there. So that might make this effectively a 3-stop race. That said, let's get trackside and let's talk about and meet our starting grid this evening for race 19 of 36. On pole this evening, we've already talked about it. We saw a bit of his run. How about Chris Wilhite, car number 7, second driver to victory lane this season, will be starting from pole this evening in race 19. Adrian Watts grids up from the second spot, starting third this evening, Las Vegas winner Alan Wilson. Justin Levine now has a win to his name. He starts from the 4th position, and starting from 5th, it'll be Luke Doran in the Ryko number 5. David Shively grids up in the 6th position, starting 7th. That's Daytona winner Joshua Watson. Alongside, it'll be the 0-2 of Richard Elliott. To round out your top 10, Andrew Griesbaum in car 78 and Derek Whitford in car 44. The rest of the field here, you see Timothy Babcock in 11th position, Nick Barisi from 12th, Brian Traeger from the 13th position alongside Lawrence Shaughnessy. A nice lineup there. Starting from 15th position, Brian Watson in car 04, Brandon Mashievsky from 16th spot, 17th is Brandon Sheffield, 18th Austin Derbyshire in the number 64, and then finally, Jason Jackson, the slowest of our qualifiers this evening in the 86 car, rolls off 19th, while Ed Kane joins the field in 20th, and it looks like Aiden Doyle has not reconnected to the session. He had a connection issue in practice and has not yet rejoined the iRacing.com session, so maybe no appearance this evening from car 24. That would be an issue for Adrian's season, of course. If you look at the standings coming into this evening, he's not even in the top 20, and that, I'm sure, is not how he would like that to be going. Once again, thank you all for joining us this evening at Pit Stop TV. It is always a pleasure to have any race broadcast, but of course, the Shake and Bake Racing Buttkicker Cup Series, first time since May at Kansas. We're back this evening. The iRacing.com pace car going to stay on the racetrack for one more lap. And we could talk more about this schedule now, so I actually quite like this. How about this schedule in the first place? A very much NASCAR schedule. Of course, last week at Chicago was swapped out from the street course to Chicagoland Speedway. I know that was a fan favorite, or I guess a driver favorite would be the way to put it. I'm partial to the street course myself, but that's okay. New Hampshire next week should be a lot of fun. Pocono and Richmond, I think, are going to be pretty popular racetracks amongst the drivers. I'd imagine that we'll even see a pretty high turnout of drivers at Indianapolis, Watkins Glen, Daytona, because, of course, that gets right down to the nitty-gritty into the playoffs. And everybody wants to make the playoffs, especially that last race at Daytona that we'll be covering here with the Shake and Bake Racing Buttkicker Cup Series. That will be oh so important for race number 26 in August. I mentioned earlier we're swapping Richmond out for Michigan. A bit of a date conflict. Has us now taking in race 23 instead of race 22, which also means we're a little bit closer to that playoff cutoff, so we'll have a better idea of how this playoff picture looks going into that 23rd race as opposed to the 22nd race at Richmond. Again, a good thing. That second lap of pacing is going to burn a little bit of extra fuel for these drivers, but they're into the restart zone in just one moment to begin race 19 of 36 for the Shake and Bake Racing Buttkicker Cup Series. Green flag is out at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Ed Kane already falling back on lap number one, up front, side by side, even three wide throughout the field. One car falling back and driving one driver into the wall. Dave Shively has caused a massive pileup. Lap number one. Oh my goodness, Derek Whitford involved, Richard Elliott involved. He was the driver that got put in the fence. Jason Jackson, Nick Barisi. What a tragedy, lap one. That is not what you want to see in a 120 lap race. Of course, we'll get a Pit Stop TV replay. Saw it kind of happening. Looking for the 85 in our lineup. Can't quite find him. There you see kind of the tail end of things as you see Richard Elliott plow up the outside wall, of course with help. That was unfortunate to see lap number one. Let's take one more look at it. Dave Shively watched the number 85 into turn 3. There was some shakeup. Shively went to the middle of the racetrack. Elliott's going to have a run here out of turn number 4. And Shively's going to throw one nasty block there and just drive the 0-2 into the fence. I hate to be so point blank, but that is a really aggressive bit of driving. Lap number 1 coming to the start-finish line just to complete the lap. I would imagine, of course, playing on devil's advocate side of things, I'd imagine that probably wasn't intentional to drive Elliott into the wall, but it happened. And quickly we see the field thin ever so slightly. We do have some takers on this first set of stops under caution. Here's a look at things once again. Shively goes up the racetrack, and just carried the 0-2 to the outside wall. You see the 44 of Whitford get into it. Barisi there, the 66. Big hits for some of these cars. And finally, driver's eye perspective on board with the driver out of Texas. Richard Elliott, great run out of turn 4. Tried to take it to the outside. Boom, wall. Oh. If not for that hit from Barisi, I think it would have been okay. Sure, a caution may still have come out, but man, that was a really big hit from the 66, as Barisi was, of course, trying to avoid it and wasn't quite able to. Some drivers did pit under this caution. Of course, I mentioned we did have some takers. Here's a look at Lawrence Shaughnessy. Brandon Sheffield also came in the 96. Brandon Mashievsky came in the 93. All the way down to Derek Whitford, of course, coming into the pit lane and leaving now with some repairs. Richard Elliott still in the pits, and Barisi now on his way out as well. While we wait for Elliott to leave the pit lane, which may not be happening as the pace field goes on by, it may not be happening anytime soon, but I do want to mention it is genuinely so good to be back with you guys. I know the Shake and Bake Racing Buttkicker Cup Series, I know you guys wish you could be broadcast more often, but it is so good to be back here for race number 19. We still have plenty of races broadcast the rest of the summer and fall. I'm going to keep talking about this because we still have Michigan, Daytona, Bristol, the Roval, Martinsville, and Phoenix. So many races to go. This is only race number 4 of our coverage with you guys this season. It only picks up from here. Excuse me. Race number 23, only 4 races away. Daytona, only a few races after that. So things are only picking up. We need you guys to come out here and support this league, and I know there might be some of you guys that maybe had some things going on this evening. That is perfectly reasonable. That happens in real life racing. Well, in real life and, of course, with sim racing. So I'm excited to see all of you guys on track as we enter the playoffs this season and crown a champion all the way back at Phoenix in November. Chris Wilhite leads us into the Geico restart zone. And the iRacing.com pace car takes to the safety of pit lane. Green flag will come back out. Lap 5 of 120 is done. Lap 6 is underway. A much more orderly start that time as Joshua Watson leads the bottom side of the racetrack. Nobody 3 wide yet. Justin Levine tucked in behind the 01. One lap will go complete now under green flag conditions. We love to see that as the field rips on past our speed shot on the front stretch. 19, no 18 strong as Ed Kane has parked it this evening and is out of the race. And Richard Elliott's the bit later. Here we go. 3 wide in the middle. Adrian Watts in the 08 car. He wants to get going early. No help from behind, though. He's not going to go anywhere quickly. Falls back alongside Brian Traeger in the 6 car. Brandon Sheffield now coming up on his outside. And this is where we'll start to see the dance. The dance of drivers trying to find their teammates, find drivers to work with. Teammates, friends, anybody. And Joshua Watson up to the point for a moment in turn 2, loses the race lead out of the corner. We'll see the top side be dominant on quarter exit, but through the center of the corner, the bottom, especially in earlier runs, really pulls up a lot of speed just by being on the inside. Watson leading for a moment. Let's see if he can do it to the line. Yes, Watson led that lap. And a big shove puts him out in front of the field on lap number 9. Joshua Watson has taken over the point. Justin Levine got him there with help from the 99 of Babcock. Wilhite left reeling as he tries to back up to his Ryco teammate Alan Wilson. But that Grid Vision 33 is doing a lot of work right now on the inside line. Justin Levine pushing the daylights out of the 01 car. Pied Piper now from the 01. Joshua Watson pulls up in front of Wilhite. Not only is that a bit of Pied Pipering, but that does line up 3 Ryco cars now in a lane, make it 4 with the 5 of Doran. 4 Ryco cars as Babcock gets loose on the bottom side of the racetrack. We might already be seeing the tires give out on these race cars, and that makes this 75% fuel load that much more interesting this evening, I think, because these tires on the bottom of the racetrack really wear out quickly, and oh, Babcock got screwy that time out of the corner. So having these cars get so free, especially on the bottom of the racetrack, and tight in some cases depending on how your car is set up, but still having to go further than you might have expected coming into this race for fuel, I think it's going to throw these guys for a bit of a loop. At the same time, I know these guys run official races as, oh, Watson loose out of turn 2. Yeah, we're seeing it already. Weather conditions. A pretty cool racetrack, actually. 83 degrees is not that warm. 74 in the air. Oh, crashing! Trouble in turn 4. Derbyshire and many more. Yeah, 85 of Shively, 86 of Jackson. And there goes the back half of our field. Sheffield into the pits. He's got lots of damage. Unbelievable to have this early. That was 12th on back. Austin Derbyshire, Nick Barisi already had damage. Derek Whitford's already been in a crash this evening. Brian Watson. David Shively. And Jason Jackson, I think, might have gotten the worst of it. That car is absolutely junked. From high atop the speedway, let's take a look at it. Car 64, Austin Derbyshire, seems to have been the center of it, and oh, wow! Brandon Sheffield, contact with the 85 of David Shively. You see it all spiral out of control from there. That is unfortunate, especially for that 64 car. He was on top of the racetrack minding his own business. Left enough room for the two cars underneath him. How did they get 3 wide in the first place? Take a look at this. Shively, it looks like, is going to get a big run. He goes to the inside of Sheffield. The top side checks up a bunch in turn 3, and that backs Derbyshire up to be alongside the 96 and the 85. Sheffield comes down as it looks like the 85 of Shively went up ever so slightly. And what a monster couple of hits for the 86 of Jason Jackson. On board with Jason Jackson. Oh, man. Ooh. Two cautions in a row now that the 85 of Shively is involved in, but this one, I don't think either driver really did anything wrong. Granted that it did result in a crash, so something must have been done wrong, but I don't think either driver really did anything specifically wrong between Shively and Sheffield. Simply drove into each other in the middle of the corner. And let's slow this down maybe one more time. Sheffield moves down. Oh, and there's some netcode in the middle. I'm not even going to say Shively came up at all anymore. I think Sheffield came down enough to just netcode the 85 car. And clearly you see it was on from there. One more look just on board the 44 car of Derek Whitford here, who is now running 6th after pit stops. I'm a little confused as to how, and consider he was a part of this crash, but let's take a look at it. On board the 44. Goes into the grass. And that was a really, really big hit. We see now some clouds breaking. There's a lot of damage to that 44 car. I'm really surprised that he is in the 6th position. We did have a lot of takers, just drivers getting fuel, of course. We do have the stage break at the completion of lap number 60, so I think that's what these drivers are trying to now plan on. Such as Chris Wilhite, Luke Doran, and plenty of others. But into the Geico restart zone, we'll go one more time. Joshua Watson, Justin Levine, your front row. Green flag flies, lap 15 underway, no, lap 16 now underway of 120. Lap 1 from the restart complete. Whitford backing up now. He's got damage, but Wilhite says, I'll just go right on through the middle. Here comes Doran, going to follow his teammate in the 5 car, in the 7 car rather. He's going to bring the 79 of Wilson. He's going to bring the 5 of Doran back there. All of the Ryko guys getting in line and moving forward. A lot of them now with fuel. Watson and Watts were the 2 Ryko cars that did not pit. It's worth mentioning the teams don't exactly go with just Ryko. Looking at the teams, thanks again to Brandon Sheffield. Shively, Greasebomb, they are teammates this evening. Kane, Sheffield, Ward, Jackson, and Whitford, of course, are teammates. And then Wilson... So Shaughnessy, Wilhite, Wilson, and Doran, they are all teammates, and that explains why they all pitted. That leaves Watson, Watts, and Elliott on a team. So just looking through here, Highside Motorsports would include Lawrence Shaughnessy, Chris Wilhite, Alan Wilson, and Luke Doran. They all pitted under that caution. So team communication happening there. The 01 and 08 are over at JBR E-Racing, along with Brian Watson and Richard Elliott, who is already out of this race. Brian Watson did pit. He was also involved in the crash, and he is very much off pace back here in the 04 car. Derbyshire with him. A lot of damage to these guys that are in the back. On board with Nick Barisi, car 66. As he trails down the 9 of Lawrence Shaughnessy, I think wanting to sit back a little bit anyways, get an idea of where things are going in this race. And that's important to do as a driver, to sit back and get your bearings, especially in a race like this. This is usually a chess match kind of race. Usually somewhere along the lines of 75 to 80% of the race green. Strategy comes into it. We saw that with the UFL Elite Series back here earlier in the year. I think that was in April maybe. And so this becomes a chess match kind of race where you play strategy, whether it's on the racetrack or in the pit lane. That's not been the case yet this evening. We've seen 2 massive crashes that have taken out a lot of cars, and now, oh boy, we could see another shaping up as Brian Watson, who was that actually? I think that was Shively, is about to be overtaken by our race leaders. That was a different car. That was Sheffield actually in the 96 who's just been lapped. And this is always a hairy moment for drivers when they have to pass somebody for the first time as a pack. They'll be doing it again here with Shively as he works to hold the bottom. Needs to hold a very consistent position down there as the field comes up at 10 miles an hour faster. Shively already 7 laps down, back on the racetrack. And will throttle down and give way on the backstretch. Well, this leaves the Ryko pairings out front. Watson, Watts, Wilhite, Doran, Wilson. Your top 5 on the racetrack, and they are all in line on the top side. That leaves Mashievsky first car out of those drivers in the Sixth position, right between Wilson actually, and the 9 of Shaughnessy, who moves around a little bit in the backstretch. On the bottom side, you're seeing Timothy Babcock pushing Justin Levine. Not so much pushing him right now. I think really just kind of leaning back and waiting. Only 3 sets of tires. You don't want to use your tires up in this race in the early goings. You want to try and make these tires last as long as they can. You're trying to get to at least about lap 40. That would make it a 3-stop race, and of course, we've seen that change a little bit, maybe a little bit extra fuel on board these cars. And that now gives these drivers the flexibility, if they still have to pit in stage 1, to wait. Wait until lap 50, lap 55, pit later in the stage, and you'll have more fuel for the end of the race. Well, as we watch this chess match unfold here at Pit Stop TV, north of 180 miles per hour, we're going to go Pit Stop TV side by side during the halfway point of stage number 1. You're watching round 19 of 36 this evening for the Shake and Bake Racing Buttkicker Cup Series. Welcome back to the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway as we will rejoin the field on lap 37 of 100, actually call it lap 36 of 120 this evening at the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway. Right back down trackside, not much has changed. Really, just a matter of lapping some more cars, and there was a very close moment with Brandon Sheffield in which he did end up hitting the outside wall. He continues on, however, continues on repairing damage currently. He is in the pit lane in car 96, getting some more damage repaired. May have inflicted more damage upon that car when he made contact with the outside wall. It's hard to say, of course, what brought him in, as he still had damage left over from that crash not so long ago. These drivers have settled in since going back green flag racing, as you can see. The ticker there on the left side and on track. We are now single file all the way back, the 8th position, as Brian Traeger will go on by for a moment. The 33 car of Justin Levine, but Levine hanging on there on the inside, now back alongside Mashievsky in the 93 car. And as we get back to it here with the field, I do want to mention we have upcoming broadcasts here at Pit Stop TV every time we go live. We always have more happening, more coming up. We go from Atlanta this evening up the road a little ways to Martinsville Speedway. Oh, and actually, how funny is that? This actually cuts out Montreal, which is tomorrow night for the Noble Can-Am Series. So want to tune in for that. Tomorrow evening, Montreal, late model stock cars, super late models, but also Monday evening, we go to Martinsville Speedway for Advanced Legends Cup action thanks to Elite Performance Industries Short Track Mondays here on Pit Stop TV. Tuesday evening, we head out to North Wilkesboro Speedway with the D-Line Racing League in late model stock cars. And then Friday, of course, we head to Charlotte Motor Speedway, another SMI facility here, along with North Wilkesboro and Atlanta, for the Barber Ford Mustang Club and their first round of action on the Roval. Nick Barisi riding back here in the 11th position, and I will say I am very impressed with this driver so far this evening. Battling lots of damage, has only dropped, well, has dropped to the 19th position. There is that, I suppose, working against him, but was involved in that crash of turn 4, actually into turn 1 on lap number 1. Still has the right front damage to prove it. And Nick is doing a fantastic job of mitigating that damage, hanging on for dear life, and of course, trying to better his result in this race as we near the end of stage number 1. However, I don't think we'll be getting there without some pit stops. Cloud cover in the sky gives it kind of a spooky, ominous look as we round lap 42 of 120, just staying on board here with Nick Barisi. Let's move up to a race leader, Joshua Watson, and take a look at what he's dealing with as they lap Shively on the bottom side of the track. Shively holds that nice inside line. Babcock drops down behind him for a moment, and hey, look at that. Levine picks him up, and now Shively goes all the way down to the bottom side of the racetrack as here comes Adrian Watts to give his teammate a shove. Those are the first two we expect on pit lane. Your two race leaders, Joshua Watts and Adrian Watts. Watson will have to pit before anybody else, leading all of these laps this evening. And he has not yet pitted. 35 laps led, though. Trying to back up his Daytona performance where he went to victory lane to begin the season. Watts, his teammate, of course, been pushing him, and that is his teammate, his one outright teammate in this race, and I can't imagine that he will be leaving his teammate out to dry, because then he'll be leaving himself out to dry when they make their pit stop. The next car in this race that has not yet pitted, Justin Levine, car 33, running 8th. Babcock along with him. Which is interesting, considering Babcock is not listed on any particular team, and Levine is here this evening nearly on his own. No teammate left in competitive order, I suppose, as Austin Derbyshire is teammate 2, the number 33 car this evening, and you can see Derbyshire back here in the 64 car has definitely seen a big crash. He was involved in that crash on turn number 4. A shakeup, wow! There we go, pit stop from Joshua Watson here on lap 45. And problems for Timothy Babcock. The 99 has spun trying to enter pit lane. Just how did he do it? Several drivers trying to pit on that lap. Just as I mentioned, we were going to see the 01 and 08 be the first ones in. Take a look here for Babcock, slowing down off the banking. He's going to chatter the rears, it looks like, and sure enough, chatters the rears, goes for a bit of a slide, noses there into the inside wall just ever so briefly, and will be losing touch with the drivers he pitted with. Oh man, I couldn't get the mute button in time. I apologize, guys. There is a mute button for a reason, and it involves sneezes, coughs, and everything else. In broadcasting, they call it a cough box. It was a clean stop for the rest of that group. Watson now back on track in the 01 car. He's got Levine with him. Watts fell back. And so maybe not as clean of a stop there for the 08 car. 14.72 seconds in the pit lane versus the 14.32 second stop for his teammate Watson. 14.25 for Levine. Brian Watson drafting here with Richard Elliott. Those two are teammates, albeit very much underpowered as they pull up to one of their other teammates, the 08 of Adrian Watts. Looks like they'll be able to run together for a little bit here. And now 45 laps. That's a little bit longer than I expected, of course. That was aided by 2 cautions. So that does still kind of support my theory of about 40 laps, maybe 42 laps of green flag racing for these guys before they have to come down the pit lane. That would mean these drivers do still have to pit. They have just... Oh, they might just be able to do it, actually. They are on lap 36 of their stint with 10 to go. That would put them right at 46 laps complete when the green and white checker flies to signify the end of stage number 1. However, the problem there would be, of course, that they would have little to no fuel for the caution to get back to the pit lane. So it'll be very, very tight for these guys. If they've been saving fuel, they might still be able to do it, but it will be a very close one for these 6. Chris Wilhite still leading Luke Doran second place. I would imagine if these guys had to pit, we'd see them in the pit lane already, especially considering there's 4 Ryko cars leading this group, those being Wilhite, Doran, Wilson, and Shaughnessy. I would expect that if they had to pit, they would have pitted with their teammates as opposed to now staying out on the racetrack, unless they're that close that they're still trying to save enough to make it. Which is entirely a possibility. Simply put, though, I just don't think that's the reality of the situation here, as Wilson moves around a little bit in the backstretch. They are onto the bottom lane of the track, though, and there's still a possibility as Nick Barisi is slow. He's leaving the pit lane. Derek Whitford in the pit lane taking service. David Shively as well, and this is going to be a long stop, it looks like, for Shively. He is taking some repairs to his number 85 car. It has been a tough day for David Shively behind the wheel. Of course, had the bad moment on the front stretch with Richard Elliott. That has very much put him behind the mark. Both of them, that is. Since then, of course, involved in the just shortly later accident with Brandon Sheffield. And there go the race leaders on by the 85 car. Five laps to go in stage 1, this time by. They're passing Timothy Babcock, who of course was left behind in that round of pit stops. He will now go 2 laps down. It's worth mentioning that Joshua Watson, Justin Levine, those guys are now over 1 lap down. Let's see, Will Height is out of turn number 2. Watson to the start-finish line now. And again, at this point in time, I really would have to imagine that if we were going to see these cars pit, they would have already. Waiting until the last moment like this can be a little bit scary. Four laps to go with that time by. They are catching. It looks like the 64 and 44 of Austin Derbyshire and Derek Whitford, who are separated by a lap. And there just isn't much happening for us. We're watching these 6 cars that are all in line out front thanks to pit strategy. This is the most exciting part of the race right now. We're waiting for strategy to come to a close here at the end of stage number 1. That'll bring the field back together somewhat. However, these drivers pitting under caution some 44 laps ago has split the field in terms of strategy, leaving these drivers on the racetrack with now just 2 laps to go in stage 1 and forcing other drivers to pit. Those being, of course, Joshua Watson, Justin Levine, Adrian Watts, Brian Watson, Nick Barisi, and Andrew Griesbaum. Griesbaum, by the way, will be lapped here shortly if he's not careful. A lap and a half to go in stage 1. Chris Wilhite still leading the field. Luke Doran still second place. How racy do these cats get with just 1 lap to go in stage number 1? A playoff point on the line. 10 points, of course, for winning the first stage. 9 for second, 8 for third, 7 for fourth. I'll be surprised if they don't race in some way, shape, or form. Looks like Shaughnessy falling back. Could he be trying to get a run? He falls back to Mashievsky. How much will the 93 help him? Where does the 79 go here? Alan Wilson, does he try to fight? Or do they all help Chris Wilhite, who has already got a win and is already into the playoffs? That is the case. It's a calm ending here to stage number 1. Chris Wilhite wins the stage and takes a playoff point. And I believe we're waiting on Brian Watson to cross the start-to-finish line to prompt our stage yellow. Unless wow, crash! Alan Wilson, absolutely run over. There's the yellow. Brian Traeger gets him, and I think I may have misremembered, thinking there'd be a stage yellow, and perhaps there wasn't one planned. However, we just got one. Alan Wilson absolutely run over, I think, while trying to pit. And the left rear is not supposed to look like that. If any of you are aspiring race car engineers, the left rear shouldn't be in that orientation. We'll look back at this. Watch the 79 car of Alan Wilson. Black and red, number 79. Race Tools Direct on the hood. Got the message apparently a little bit late and absolutely run over by Timothy Babcock and Brian Traeger. And that was the hit that did it. Did Wilson not get the message here? Listening on board with Alan Wilson out of Indiana to see if there's any change in throttle. He was on the throttle until late and gets lifted up by the 99 car, hit here by the 6. Kapow. What a big couple of hits. To Babcock now, who is the back end of this line. The lap, let's see, 1 lap down at time of caution, no, 2 laps down at time of caution. Just riding with these drivers, waiting for something to happen, and wow. I think it's cut and dry. I don't think Wilson got the message about pitting, and clearly Babcock, not much he could do. I'm curious as to how Traeger ends up in this. Perhaps he also didn't get the message about pitting because he was high on the racetrack and then abandoned once he saw the spinning 79 car. Mashievsky ends up successfully abandoning that pit stop attempt, but that was a really scary incident, frankly, and if this were properly NASCAR, we'd really be able to see the new next-gen updates at hand, but on board of Traeger, you'll see Mashievsky bail out here in a second. Traeger does the same thing. Shaughnessy still turns in, but once those guys know they're getting a caution, they go right back up onto the racetrack, and wow, Whitford was close to collecting the 6 car. And all of this has put Alan Wilson, for the time being, your race leader, but he comes into the pit lane, of course, and will forfeit that position. So much damage to that 79 car in the left rear specifically, and you can even see it from under the car. It's not the way it should be pointing. There's no telling exactly how long Wilson will be in the pit lane. Of course, no fast repairs in this series, and there goes the rest of the field off the pit lane. Luke Doran, the first of the bunch. Shaughnessy follows, and let's see, Joshua Watson comes around thanks to, I believe, a free pass. Levine will do the same. Grease bomb, it looks like, as well. And this puts Mashievsky in the race lead. We have had our fair share of drama this evening. The iRacing.com pace car has its lights out. Will we go green this time? It looks like it. We have 6 cars in the pacing field, and no, the caution has been extended. Reasonably so. We have Mashievsky and Traeger. Will Height is back here in 3rd, waiting on somebody to go by. There's Adrian Watts also waiting on somebody. You see Luke Doran, Joshua Watson coming up. So while these guys get things figured out, we're going to go Pit Stop TV side by side. There we go once again. And we'll be right back to you with our restart. It does appear that we're going back green flag racing. I'm a little bit surprised by this. A single file restart for our field as we begin stage number 2. Brandon Mashievsky in control of the field. A very disjointed restart. 3 wide already as cleaner cars race into the field of slower damaged cars. Oh, this is going to be a bit of fun. One lap complete from the restart. Mashievsky, the race leader. Babcock just in behind the leader, is not for position. However, Watson is around the top of the racetrack. He's going to take the race lead this time out of turn number 2 and bring Justin Levine along with him. There goes Will Height. Here comes Traeger. Doran going to follow. And on board with the driver out of Georgia, a home race for him. Wouldn't he like to get it done in the number 5 car? Following Traeger through the front stretch. Not many options of what you can do during the race, during green flag. You can do a bit more on the pit lane. And of course, Pandora's box opens up truly once you get down to the last couple of laps, but in the meantime, we're just trying to get to those last few laps. There's simply not much that you can do as a driver behind the wheel. If you go so low, you're not going anywhere. You might grab a couple of spots and then lose them, but you're not going to go to the front as a solo driver in this race. That we have found out. Alan Wilson still in the pit lane. He's just been passed by Barisi, Babcock, and more. Griesbaum hanging on to the tail end of the lead lap. He is 9th place, the final car on the lead lap. We have 15 cars left running out of 20. Ed Kane, Brandon Sheffield behind the wall, Austin Derbyshire as well behind the fence. Brian Watson and Alan Wilson are now behind the wall and out of this race. And it is single file in the top 10. This is a very different race than I was expecting, as here we go. Will Height and Doran down to the bottom side. They're going to bring Shaughnessy. And here we have Ryko on Ryko action. The Will Height bunch from Highside Motorsports going to bring Shaughnessy and Doran. They're going to fight to the inside, as Watson has no true teammate because Watts is 3 cars back. So it's 4 on 4 here in the front, 8 cars strong as Griesbaum hangs back and Babcock is a lap car. And that bottom side falling back, the top certainly dominant. We've seen that. I thought the bottom would be stronger. And there they go. They slink back in line behind Timothy Babcock. Will Height trying to make a move. And he is going to bring the 5 car once again. They are dead set on trying to go somewhere. Now back in behind the 99. Where does Chris Will Height go? Clearly he wants to go somewhere. Forward is the main objective. Not able to accomplish that yet as he sits behind the lap car of Babcock. And quite frankly, Timothy Babcock might still be in this race. Barisi is 1 lap down. 5 seconds back of these drivers, trying to hang on to somebody's draft. But Timothy Babcock may still be in this race as Will Height gives him a push into turn number 1. Adrian Watt's going to test the waters. He goes down to the bottom side and goes backwards in a hurry. Luke Doran fills that spot. Babcock dropping back. And Chris Will Height up to the 4th position. They'll be lapping 1 car on the inside. That is the 79 of Alan Wilson back on the racetrack. He is 3 laps down, which, I'll be honest, that is very surprising considering the angle that left rear was at. The car driving fine for now, though. He drops down onto the inside of the racetrack, and you know, I don't think much was wrong with the car aside from the angle of the left rear wheels, so he might yet have a chance. If we get 3 more cautions in 40-some laps, he may still be able to get back into this race and compete at some kind of competitive level. It may not be game over yet for the 79. However, it might be for Mashayevsky, who it seems has dropped out of the race. Oh boy. Troubles for the 93 suddenly. He was in this pack, and maybe that would explain why things have suddenly shifted. Mashievsky on the pit lane, and there is some damage to the right front of that car. Here's look what happened to Brandon Mashievsky, car 93. They were lapping Wilson when this happened. Adrian Watts right behind the 93 car. Saw Shaughnessy pop the outside wall. And gone was the 93 from the field. He's come back to the race, though. He is in the pit lane. Lap 79 complete right there, and we have got a lot of lap cars suddenly right in front of our leaders. 3 of them, in fact, into turn 1. Richard Elliott, Brian Watson, the first 2. They stay low, playing nicely as everybody this evening, especially with a couple of cautions we've had. David Shively will be the other. There's the onboard from car 85. And this is actually going to shake things up. Watson and Elliott are going to come up on the Shively and go to the middle of the racetrack. That now is going to make it 3 wide for our race leaders. Elliott hangs in front of Watson for a moment. That was a rather odd moment to watch take place. Thankfully, it works out as the sun peeks out onto the backstretch. An overcast day here at Atlanta. And this is a really cool racetrack. I gotta say, Atlanta Motor Speedway has done a fantastic job with this facility. It already was a fantastic place to watch a race. Great stands, great suites. A wonderful concourse underneath the grandstands. A great facility to begin with. Updating the pavement, of course, repaving this racetrack, changing the banking, reformatting this place, narrowing the back straightaway, has all gone to creating one epic place you've got to visit. It's in a great piece of the country, too. I know, of course, there's great jokes and memes to be made about the traffic in Atlanta, but if you're able to go to a ball game in Atlanta for the Braves, of course, they're playing their best baseball, I think, ever in franchise history. But the club they've got there, the whole area around the ballpark, a really cool place to go see as well. A lot of great places to go grab a drink, grab a bite, hang out. When I went in 2021, I went early. I got there hours before the game. They've got a great museum behind home plate. And just hanging out, feeling the energy. It was my first ball game ever, at least as an adult, certainly. And I think my first ball game in probably 9-10 years since I saw the D-backs and the Guardians way back in Arizona. But seeing the Braves play, of course I'm not exactly a Braves fan, but just seeing that whole energy, that stadium filled with all those great fans. It was prior to their World Series run. Such a fantastic bit of energy in and around that stadium. Atlanta really does love their Braves. And even as a Red Sox fan, when the Red Sox were playing that night, yes, the Red Sox won. Of course, we love that. But even as a Red Sox fan, I got into the tomahawk chop. It's too infectious not to. So yes, there I was outside of right field, doing the chop right with all those Atlanta fans. That's just a great place to be. Atlanta Motor Speedway really should be on all of your radars, because you can do a whole lot more than just see a race in that area. Of course, Hampton, a little ways outside of the city, so you can find a nice place to stay for the weekend. And Joshua Watson is trying to book his stay in Atlanta Motor Speedway Victory Lane, and he's just about done so. I don't know what the requirement of laps led is. Percentage of the race led, I suppose, is that you have to win, but 57 laps led out of 86 run. He's batting a pretty high average. Pun intended. Well, David Levine checking in. Yeah, it is a great place to watch a game. Not a Braves fan myself. The Red Sox won. That's why I win, apparently. But As this race gets into its latter stages, we saw a pit strategy play out in stage 1. It's a completely different slate, however, here in stage number 2. However, the same problem arises for these two leading this race. Joshua Watson and Justin Levine still have to pit. I'm trying to do some quick maths, and I believe Brian Traeger and all those other guys have to pit as well. So I think everybody still has to pit once before ending this race. However, it's a very different ballgame. Again, pun intended, because Watson and Levine will have to pit ASAP. If not this lap, the next likely for the 01 and 33 car. I'm not sure how much fuel they've been able to save, but they pitted under green and have only had one caution to try and save fuel. And they had to go full throttle through it to try and catch back up to the pace field. So I'm really not sure how much they've got in the tank. They're in my gauge, though. We have not seen a proper full green flag run take place just yet. The closest proof these guys can go about 55 laps. So again, it's going to be close for our race leaders. I think they'll have to pit, or at least get close to running out of fuel. However, these two definitely will have to come down the pit lane, and this might be the lap they do it. There they go to the bottom. It'll be on to lap, well, it is lap 90, the completion of lap 90 then. Watson and Levine to the inside of the racetrack. Expect them to pit this time by, and sure enough, at a turn 4, there they go to the bottom of the racetrack. They're going to bring Grease Bomb with them. And lock up there for Watts as he tries to push the issue into the pit lane. Certainly can't blame him. This is the onboard from Grease Bomb. This is a very important set of pit stops for these 4 drivers. They've got to be absolutely perfect. Cannot miss the box. Cannot go sliding through. Cannot spin the tires too much. Grease Bomb in nicely. Watson as well. Levine and Watts. Everybody clean pit stops getting in at least. Let's see how they are getting out of the box. And there goes Grease Bomb early. It was a 2-tire stop for Grease Bomb. If the rest had committed, boy, would that have been a play. Levine and Watson, though, along with Watts, I think they're all prioritizing better tires at the end of this race as they go 1 lap down. Here's a look at your race leaders, all 4 of them. Chris Wilhite, Luke Doran, Lawrence Shaughnessy, Brian Traeger. Of course, they lost Alan Wilson. They lost, well, they still have Brian Traeger. Despite that damage caught in that crash with Wilson, he is still in the lead lap. And how about Brian Watson in the 04 car? Richard Elliott in the 02 car. Watson is 8 laps down, which of course puts him 3 laps behind Derek Whitford, who's still in this race. Richard Elliott, however, he is closing in on Brandon Masiewski, who has parked it. He is 5 laps behind the 93 car, 22 laps down to the race leader. Shively into the pit lane, in for service, and there he goes. Jason Jackson, by the way, has re-entered the race as well, and he is in this lead pack, along with Barisi and Whitford. We have seen so little of today, but is in this little group along with Alan Wilson and Andrew Grease Bomb now, who had an interesting strategy call that actually could work out. This could be huge for Andrew Grease Bomb in a way that I did not expect. First, we have to check into the pit strategy there of Whitford. Oh, wow, this really could be something. Wilson has got fewer laps on this set of tires and fuel than the race leaders. That leads me to believe he's good to go, along with, let's see, we're looking for Barisi, who is one of the race leaders technically with 30 laps on his stint, but has a couple less than Wilhite and Doran. This could be a really compelling way for this race to work out, potentially, for Andrew Grease Bomb, depending on how fast he is compared to the cars behind. And it might be getting concerning. And all of that compelling action, I think, is out the window because the race, potential race leaders behind them, Watson, Levine, and Watts, are catching up in a hurry. These cars that Grease Bomb is with simply are not fast enough right now. So there goes that possibility. It was fun while it lasted for Andrew Grease Bomb. I think if those cars were a bit faster, of course, maybe they might not be in the position they're in, but Grease Bomb would have had a really solid strategy possibility. As here they come to pass the 78 car. I doubt they'll link up, and sure enough, They go to the outside of the racetrack and go right on by the 78. However, the 78 will be able to link on to the back end of them and try to go on by. As Barisi is passed up by Justin Levine. So this is actually a very important pass for those drivers to get over Barisi. Adrian Watts, fastest lap as we're on lap 98 of 120. Here's your race leaders, all four of them ahead of a few lap cars, and it's hard to say, but I think we'll see them in the pit lane. The other problem, of course, that I've worked against me is I'm kind of going off of a 60 lap average or so for tires and fuel on a 1.5, maybe 65 laps ordinarily, but we're at 75% of that. However, we are in slower cars that are restricting fuel burn. Or I guess more importantly, restricting the air that is sent into the engine to be burned with the fuel. But restricting power at the very least. It's hard to say exactly how this race will play out. These guys are going to be very close, though, as Babcock goes up to the top of the racetrack. Brian Watson there in that group as well, as Richard Elliott has to come into the pit lane. And, of course, go back to lap 1 to find his woes of the day. And with that, 20 laps are left to go here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. One more time, we're going to go Pit Stop TV side by side while these guys get close, either to pit stops or to the end of the race, whichever comes first for our race leaders. Welcome back to the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway in the virtual Hampton, Georgia. There you take a look at the Thunder Ring, the quarter-mile oval on the front stretch at Atlanta Motor Speedway that hosts racing throughout the summer for legend cars and Bandolero racers across the nation who divulge upon the Southeast for summer racing at Atlanta Motor Speedway and Charlotte Motor Speedway for the summer shootout that I'm lucky enough to take part in broadcasting with Flow Racing this year. That said, we have just over 10 laps to go. Chris Wilhite still your race leader, and we still hold in the same formation of waiting just waiting to see what's going to happen. And I hate playing the waiting game as a broadcaster because there's so much less that I can tell you viewers about what's happening, what might happen, and who's going to win this race. However, there is not much else we can do. We haven't seen a full fuel run with this 75% fuel limit. That is the kicker this evening. 75% fuel with the 3 change sets of tires. Although we do have 3 green, white, and checkers possible, so we could absolutely extend this race over 120 laps and make things a little bit more exciting. Until then, we're waiting to see if these drivers can go to the end of this race on their current tank of fuel. They pitted 48 laps ago, however, under caution. Actually, call it 45 for Luke Doran, Lawrence Shaughnessy, 44 for Brian Traeger. And with 12 laps to go that time by the flag stand, it's certainly going to be close. It's going to be 59 for Chris Wilhite by the time this race is over. 57 for Luke Doran. Further back, we find Joshua Watson, who is 8.5 seconds behind Timothy Babcock, and this group has been gaining slowly on the race leaders. This could make things difficult for Babcock and put him in a bad spot for 5th position, but it's just so far down the radar right now, considering these guys are 1 lap down after their pit stop some 18 laps ago. And the unfortunate thing is, Wilhite, Doran, Shaughnessy, they could all just take a splash and stay out front. However, it looks as if they are committed to this run going to the end. Just 10 laps to go for our race leaders, and Chris Wilhite stays out front. Just taking a look into this season's results. And Chris Wilhite has won... Well, I'm sorry. First of all, I think he was the Daytona winner. I've been calling Joshua Watson the Daytona winner. I do apologize. I think it's been Chris Wilhite the whole time. But he has been absolutely stellar this season. I believe he's got a win at Bristol Dirt, maybe Dover as well. So a few wins to his name. Nashville, he scored a bunch of points. Chicagoland last week, though, he was outscored by Joshua Watson by plenty of points. That said, he's second in the standings going into this race, trying to chase down Joshua Watson and have enough playoff points. They have to pit. Here we go, into the pit lane. This is everything we've been waiting on, and a big lockup from the 7 and the 5. Shaughnessy enters behind them. The 6 of Traeger with him, Babcock with him as well. Watson now unlapped. How much fuel do these drivers take? They have 7 laps to go as they pass the flag stand. How much fuel does that compare? Oh, man. They can splash and dash. Yeah, not on the jacks at all for these drivers. I wouldn't expect that. Back out onto the racetrack they go. But have the other drivers made enough time up on them? They were running faster. Here they are on the front stretch. They might be able to get there or at least get close. There's Watson, Levine, Watson, Griesbaum. Doran out of the pit lane is in turn 2. This is going to be very close. Watson full speed on turn number 2. Is he going to get there? He's at least going to get to Brian Traeger, it looks like. That's the black dot right in front, and this is going to make things oh so interesting. It was a 5-second stop for those drivers, but running at speed has seriously benefited Joshua Watson, Justin Levine, Adrian Watts, Andrew Griesbaum as they fly by the 6 car. This race not yet over. 6 laps to go. And 2 cars in the wall. That includes Chris Wilhite and Luke Doran. They both drove into the fence themselves. Here comes Watson on the top side. Shively, the lap car, just in front. Watson with tons of momentum. He's gotten the Grid Vision 33 of Justin Levine pushing him. Where will they go out of turn 4? They stay in line? No, to the top side. Watson slams into the outside wall. He had to do something, and now through the middle goes Justin Levine. Watts tries to get down there. Doris Shively down the racetrack. He hangs on to it. 5 laps to go the last time by. Will Height is glued to Watt's door. Now back up behind Levine, who gives now help to the 08 car. Now back in front of the Ryko number 7. Watson, he's still in it. Here he comes to the aid of his teammate. Remember, Levine's been working with Watson and Watts, but he is not on the same team. Levine, the independent driver of this bunch. Along with Brian Traeger, actually, for that matter. Neither of them have teammates in this group. On board with Justin Levine, your race leader, with just 4 laps to go. Oh, how everything has changed. Glad to see Spencer Clark in the chat. Just 3 laps to go, this time by the flag stand. They do have another lap car ahead, that's Richard Elliott. Teammates to the 08 and 01 on the bottom side, he'll play nicely. Will Height now looks to the middle, can he go through the gap? No. 2.5 laps to go, and Watts suddenly takes over the race lead by a nose. He's got the help from Watson. Two laps to go this time by Levine and Watts side by side. Will Height gets a rung, and he's going to bring Doran with him. Where's the 7 car going to go? He's led too much of this race to give it up now. 46 laps led for the 7 car, 60 for the 01. Neither of them want to give it up. Watts, though, runs up and doors the 7 of Will Height out of turn 2. That's going to change the dynamic once more. It's white flag, 1 lap to go next time by. Can Justin Levine hang on in Atlanta? He's going to have to back up to the 7 of Wilson, or Will Height rather. 1 lap to go, white flag presented by Whiplash Sim Cams. Final time at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Will Height down to the inside, nearly gets into the left rear. Is Watts going to help him? Yes. He gets there. He's going to move the 7 up the racetrack and open a hole to the inside. Levine back to the middle, side by side, 3 wide, shoves his way through. Help on the bottom, help on the top. Will Height's got it, Watts got it. Levine wants it, and out of turn number 4, Adrian Watts is going to victory lane at Atlanta Motor Speedway, 4 wide behind him. And a massive hit at the end for the 01. What an incredible finish for a couple of drivers who stayed true to their strategy, and in the end, boy, did it ever just work out. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. What a way to end that race. They saved all the excitement for the last 5 laps. Wow, I'm still trying to catch my breath. Absolutely incredible job by Adrian Watts to position himself on that final lap. They had nearly fallen back to where I thought they were out of contention, Watson. And a much-earned burnout celebration for Adrian Watts at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Take a look at the season standings coming into this evening. He, of course, already had a win. This only adds to his playoff points to go against guys like Wilson, Mashievsky, Doran. Drivers that he was oh so familiar with in this race this evening, but a very important win for the 08 car this evening. That is how you end a race. Congratulations to everybody this evening in the Shake and Bake Racing Buttkicker Cup Series, but most importantly, car 08 out front led 1 lap this evening. And as they say, it was the most important one. There you see the full race results. Your top 10, Adrian Watts, Joshua Watson, Chris Wilhite, Justin Levine, and Lawrence Shaughnessy. Luke Doran goes 6th, Andrew Griesbaum 7th, as those are your lead lap competitors. Nick Barisi 1 lap down, Timothy Babcock 2 laps down, Brian Traeger 3 laps down to the 6 car. Whitford, Wilson, Watson, Shively, and Elliott, the rest of your top 15. Before you get to guys like Jason Jackson, Brandon Mashievsky, Austin Derbyshire, Brandon Sheffield, and Ed Kane this evening. All 20 cars that made the race. Adrian Watts has got to be pumped up after that one. I can only imagine what these three Ryko drivers have got to say, but let's bring in tonight's race winner, Adrian Watts, and what a show that was in the last 5 laps. For a long time, Adrian, it looked like you guys were a little bit out of it on the fuel strategy, but you made up enough time running green flag to catch those guys even with a splash and dash. What was it like then once you came out of the pit lane and you suddenly had a door of opportunity thrust open?
Oh, we were worried there, and when they said they were pitting, we just told Josh to go and see if we could catch them.
And of course, you guys share Ryko Performance logos on the side of your cars, but that does not mean that you, Watson, and those other guys sharing those logos are on the same strategy, and that was evident very early in this race. What was different behind your guys' thought processes?
Really, coming in tonight, we were trying to get Brian or Richard up front, to lock them in, but, they got caught up early, and basically it was just trying to have a good finish for us too, and it worked out great.
You mentioned just trying to have a good finish. That sounds a lot like just trying to get a good points day from back in the day in NASCAR. And how relevant is that kind of strategy at this point for you and Joshua, who already have wins on the season and are just trying to amass more and more playoff points to set yourself up for the playoffs?
Yep, just get more points and just make it easier for when the playoffs come, just in case something bad happens, you have something to fall back on.
There you go, Adrian Watts this evening from the top spot when it's all said and done. Congratulations, you led one lap, which, as they say, is the most important one. Hopefully we see you in Michigan in a few weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Adrian Watts, fantastic, a crazy win this evening at Atlanta. That is going to go down as one of those fantastic Atlanta finishes. Joshua Watson goes second this evening, teammates to that guy who took the checkered flag. And Joshua, you guys have got a knack for figuring something out there at the end, apparently. What a finish. What was it like from your perspective?
Oh, man, that was very nerve-wracking, just from not knowing if they could make it on fuel. I didn't think they could, but I'm like, well, maybe they saved, wasn't sure. And then when I saw them pit, I knew we had to go. And then when we caught them, I made a really dumb move trying to go to the outside and smack the wall. Thought I really ended our chance there, but was able to get back to our teammate and get him pushed up. Once I seen Justin shoot the middle down the back, I knew that it broke their momentum up, and I just thought if we could clear them, or at least be side by side going into 3 and 4, we got a shot, and we had our teammate Richard behind us. And sure enough, that's what happened. It was more about trying to get Captain to win, getting one of us to win, but to come home 1-2 there is quite awesome.
I know Adrian mentioned trying to get the 0-2 car in the playoffs, and of course that went wrong on lap number 1, but how does the plan shift then for the 0-2 and the 0-4, trying to get each of them a win, hopefully, and either win or point their way into the playoffs at this point?
Oh, that's still the goal, is trying to get all 4 of us in. I know we're a couple of them are pretty close points-wise. We might be able to point in Brian, depending on how this rest of the season goes, but no doubt any chance we can get a chance to try to get them to victory lane, we're going to. We really wanted to tonight, but it just didn't work out. There was some moves in the back that caused some wrecks that they got caught up in, which is very unfortunate. They've had a rough season with getting caught up in other people's stuff, but we'll get them up there. We'll get them going. We've had a really strong year this year with me and Adrian. So we're just hopefully carry the momentum over to those two and carry us the rest of the year.
And of course, things are a little bit different now for the 0-2, the one less race to get the 0-2 and the 0-4 in. You mentioned trying to get them in still in these last few races. Other than Daytona, what tracks are outlined for you guys and your team to try and get the 0-2 and the 0-4 in?
Oh, there's a few. You got Michigan that still could, it's not so much a drafting track, but it will help to have teammates there as far as pushing in some draft. There's a couple others I can't think of off the top of my head. I'm still kind of wound up about that finish, but
no worries.
There's a few tracks there that team-wise we really excel at. And like I said, we've been on a roll this year with me and Captain, so we're going to work with them to get them up in there, and we'll be good to go. Right now the focus is on them. Wanted to do it tonight, but unfortunately we weren't able to, but to still put one of our JBR cars in victory lane is awesome, and that that JBR swept Atlanta this year, which is probably even more, what's the word I'm looking for, impressive. That I'm, very impressed and proud of this team that we swept that track. So just looking on to the next tracks now.
Well, there you go. 2 wins at Atlanta for the team and an extra win here for Adrian Watts. He's got to feel pretty good. Congratulations, Josh. Congratulations to your team as a whole. Excellent performance.
Thank you, and thank you guys for broadcasting.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. Chris Wilhite goes 3rd place. For a long time, it looked like strategy was going to shape up the way of the 7 car. It worked out in stage 1, Chris, but what was different in stage number 2 for your strategy?
Yeah, so we topped off there early in the race so we could make it to stage, and that worked until it didn't, because we had a wreck kind of coming onto pit road. They kind of messed all that up. Still got the stage win, which was awesome. And so then we were trying to play it out, Adrian and Josh versus me and Lawrence and Luke, and we knew they had to pit earlier, so we were going to run it long. And then we kind of started doing the math and like, man, we're only gonna have 7 laps to go, so let's try no tires. So we left the same set of tires on and came out in the lead, and but they were just mowing us down a little bit too quick, and shut the door on them a little bit to where they didn't blow us by. And then, man, had a awesome last couple laps to the end there.
Well, it was still an excellent performance for you and everybody at that team. And how does the teamwork, I guess, kind of shift back to more traditional racetracks the rest of the summer?
Yeah. I mean, the teamwork here on the super speedways is really where it plays out, obviously, and we've been really good at Dega and Daytona and here this year. So yeah, back to some more traditional racing, and still try to play out the strategy a little bit with the teammates. But yeah, it's really more about kind of working together through the week and just kind of turn laps on the set, and kind of getting better through the week, and getting ready for Saturday and Sunday night.
Well, congratulations. You see the epic finish there in the background on the broadcast. It was definitely one to watch between you guys. One of those fantastic Atlanta finishes. You were a big part of it. Congrats on the 3rd place finish. A bunch of laps led, and hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks at Michigan.
Yep, that sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Chris Wilhite with a 3rd place effort when it's all said and done in that epic finish with Justin Levine and Joshua Watson, Lawrence Shaughnessy, and of course tonight's race winner, Adrian Watts, going to victory lane. As we mentioned earlier, here's a look at the upcoming broadcast here at Pit Stop TV. We took a look at the schedule a couple of times for the series, but next up for us, it's actually tomorrow evening, July 9th, we head out to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve with the completely brain blinked there with the Noble Can-Am Series, late model stock cars and super late models on a road course. We've seen it a couple of times this season. Of course, we saw it with the D-Line Racing League that comes back on Tuesday at North Wilkesboro. But we have late models on track in a multi-class format tomorrow evening at Montreal. Before we go to Martinsville Speedway with the new portion of Elite Performance Industries Short Track Mondays as we take on the Advanced Legends Cup. Round number 5 for Martinsville Speedway. Tuesday, as I mentioned, the D-Line Racing League presented by Elevated Performance goes to North Wilkesboro. And then Friday evening, a new one for us. It's the Barbara Ford Mustang Club heading out to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Thanks for watching this evening. Of course, follow us out on our social media platforms listed down below on the bottom of the screen. And a big shout out to our series partner, of course, the Buttkicker. Feel what you've been missing. Thanks to our partners here at Pit Stop TV, Whiplash Media, SimCams, ATVO, and CC's Business. And a big shout out to those who make it happen for us behind the scenes. In audio, ATVO, Whiplash Media, SimCams, OBS, and iRacing.com. And we will see you all in in Michigan in just a few short weeks as we begin that August stretch of some fantastic racetracks to end this regular season. Don't miss it. We'll see you there.
With the Buttkicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Buttkicker. The future is feeling.